Hello, everyone. Welcome to Teachly University, to my lecture, The Financial Masters, A Guide to Wealth, Part 2. And in this lecture series, in Part 2, we're going to be discussing really a brief history of the financial markets, or really more specifically, a brief history of wealth creation. And again, it's just a brief overview of the vast and rich history of how not just the United States, but really how our world has transformed as a result of individuals and societies accumulating wealth and being able to grow their economies through the development of products and services and innovations that have changed our world. And I would argue that Andrew Carnegie and Henry Ford and Johnny Rockefeller and these other titans were able to accumulate vast fortunes as a result of developing products and services within their industries that revolutionized our economy and changed our world and made our lives so much easier as a result of what they did. So, this is a quote from Warren Buffett, who said, "In the 20th century, the United States endured two world wars and other traumatic and expensive military conflicts, the Depression, a dozen or so recessions and financial panics, oil shocks, a flu epidemic, and the resignation of a disgraced president. Yet the Dow rose from 66 to 11,497. A Dow, of course, is much higher than that now. But the point here, though, is that the United States, as of right now, is the most powerful economy in the world. And what happens here economically in the United States impacts the rest of the world and vice versa. Our economy, the global economy, is all interconnected thanks to globalization. And the United States, and what Warren Buffett is alluding to here, is that even through all the challenges and crisis and Great Depressions and all the wars that we've all experienced, or as a country for that matter, the United States has been able to grow economically, and more wealth and innovation and opportunities have been created even in the midst of crisis and challenges. And this is something to think about, especially now as we're still sort of reeling with the coronavirus pandemic, how even through all the challenges that we faced in history, we've seen not just the United States, but the world overcome these challenges and really see new products and services and wealth creation really come into light, and how so many individuals have been able to overcome their financial challenges to accumulate great wealth by creating products and services that change the lives of themselves and their community and their nations. So it's just something to think about here as far as how crisis isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it can be a tremendous opportunity to generate wealth. And really, just to hit home how even through crisis, our economy has grown significantly. We can see in this chart here of the Dow Jones Industrial Average that goes back about 100 years or so. And we can see here just through this chart that even through Great Depressions, two world wars, pandemics, economic crisis, political crisis, social unrest, and other crises and challenges, our economy has grown significantly. And we can see in the upward trend of the Dow Jones Industrial Average how our economy, really the global economy as a whole, has grown. Because, and again, this chart I think is symbolic of how our economy in the United States is interconnected with what happens around the globe. What impacts us here can impact what goes on in Europe and elsewhere. And I think it's important to think about this. So with this growth we can see here, this is symbolic of how nations and individuals, more people than ever before, have been able to accumulate wealth, improve their standard of living, and be able to create innovations and products and services that have changed our lives. And that is really the engine that has caused us to see our economy grow. It's that when individuals and societies and companies do things that can benefit us and also at the same time benefit them by accumulating wealth because of the products and services that they sell in the open market. And again, in history, we look at the late 19th century or early part of the 20th century. The United States was an agrarian society where our society consisted of farmers and small cities, where our economy was still not really fully developed yet. We were a young nation compared to like the European powers in the 19th and 20th century. But flash forward to today, our economy is really transformed now into this modern world that we live in today, where we have iPhones and computers and innovations and things that were not even heard of Just going back 30 to 40 years ago, things were not even thought would even be possible. We're able to reap the rewards of today and living in this modern world. And a lot of this we can thank is the accumulation of capital. It's individuals taking the initiative to take risk and develop products and services and businesses that can change our lives. It is this drive for really taking risks to achieve a particular desire that is the engine of wealth creation and progress in our modern world. So, capitalism without failure, then, is like religion without hell. Capitalism doesn't have necessarily just to involve money. It really is about risk. It's about understanding that to achieve anything, any worthwhile result, whether it is to improve our financial standing, to when we enter a relationship, whatever that is, there is a certain level of risk involved. And without failure, then really there wouldn't be any point of taking that risk in the first place or taking that action because it wouldn't be worthwhile. There needs to be a level of risk. Failure, and I think a lot of people are risk or failure averse today. But without failure, then we wouldn't be able to get to that other side where that reward, that financial benefit, we wouldn't be able to take advantage of. Because if failure didn't exist, if there was no risk involved, well, then that would not be a world that we want to live in. Because without risk, again, there wouldn't really be any opportunities to be able to grow and navigate this world where we can grow and improve our finances. So without risk, then, there is no reward. So wealth creation, then, requires risk. And the growth of the US and global economy and the emergence of the middle class is a result of individuals pursuing their desires by taking calculated risks. You look at Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Johnny Rockefeller, and these other titans, they took calculated risks in their industries. They understood what the risks were, but they did it anyway. They took action because they had a vision for what it is that they wanted to accomplish. Of course, one of them was to accumulate a vast fortune, was to make money, which is a driving force behind, I think, a lot of the reasons why we started business. But also it's because so we can improve our community, so we can make the world a better place. And it is this desire for wealth, this desire for innovation, and for taking risks that has driven the US and global economy to where it is today. Again, I want to keep hitting this home. Without risk, there is no reward. We need that risk. And risk is inherent in our nature. We're hardwired to take risks. Going back to a Paleolithic society when basically human beings were living in caves and in tribal societies. These societies took risks all the time in terms of finding food. I mean, they didn't have the luxuries that we have today. They had to take risks in finding food, in fighting other tribes, in weathering the elements of nature. There were risks involved. And some of the downsides, I think, today with living in an abundant society that we live in today is that I think some of that yearning for risk has been sort of blunted because of all the conveniences that we have today. I'm not saying these conveniences are bad, but sometimes discomfort is necessary to grow and accumulate wealth. And it's this discomfort and this tension that has driven individuals to take risks and developed businesses and ideas that have shaped our economy here in the United States and abroad. So wealth creation then requires understanding how to save, invest, and create value by thinking of ways to improve the lives of our fellow men while knowing how to manage risk. Whether you're investing in a stock, starting a business, whether you're getting money from an angel investor, there's a certain level of risk involved. Even by putting money in a savings account, there's a level of risk. Because one could argue that, right now the interest on a savings account is what, 0.01%. So you're actually taking risk by leaving money in that savings account because of inflation. It's actually losing value. Now, of course, all of that with inflation and everything, that's another lecture for another time. But the point is here is that there's always some sort of risk. So it's important to know what kind of risk you're end up facing when taking action or making a decision when it comes to your finances. And when looking at times of industry, they understood the risks involved. But the risks that these individuals took, like Carnegie and Ford, in all these different industries, in banking and oil and steel, and mass production of vehicles and computers and e-commerce and others, these individuals took risks. They faced failure, they faced disappointment, but even through all the challenges, like our economy as a whole faced, they were able to grow, develop their businesses like Standard Oil and like in banking with JP Morgan. They were able to develop these businesses within these industries. They revolutionized our economy and made the United States a global superpower like it is today. And again, they did this by taking risk. And you look at the history of the financial markets and wealth creation. It's about knowing how to manage risk and how to make decisions and knowing when to cut your losses and be able to use desire and innovation as a driving force behind your decisions so that you can improve not only your own financial standing, but improve the lives of others. And as consumers and as individuals who are looking to accumulate wealth and become wealthy, we all participate in an economic system where there are buyers and sellers that interact with each other on a daily basis. Whether it's that person going to the Apple store to buy an iPhone, or you're going to Starbucks to buy that latte that you get every single morning before work, or from that student who's launching a small startup who's getting money from an angel investor. These are all buyers and sellers. We all participate in systems, whether it's an economic system, a societal, a cultural system. We all participate in systems where individuals interact with each other. And through this interaction, there's volatility. Now, back in the day, throughout human or in the early parts of human history, we used to barter. Where, for example, if I wanted, say, milk, for example, I would barter with you. Say maybe I had some livestock, I will give you one goat or one cow so I can have that beef or milk. That's just a generic example here. But the point is that we used to barter our own personal items so that, and exchange them for goods that we needed in order to survive. The problem is with bartering is that it's very cumbersome and it really is very difficult to develop an advanced economy through barter. It just wasn't really an efficient way to be able to exchange, to be able to facilitate the purchases of goods and services or necessities that are needed for life. Now, of course, that is why currency was developed. And really, the US dollar has become to symbolize wealth and accumulating vast fortunes, which is really the US dollar has come to symbolize. And of course, the US dollar is the world reserve currency. So the US dollar can be used almost anywhere in the world. Could that change in the future? Maybe it's possible, but right now the US dollar is the world reserve currency, and we use currency as a way to facilitate goods and services. So obviously, if we sell a particular product, we want to be able to sell it and get money in return. And we want to keep accumulating this money so we can use this money so we can purchase our own goods and services that will make our lives better. So it's this brief overview of how money works and how our economy works and how our free market system works that helps us understand why it is we do what we do when it comes to making our financial decisions and how we can keep this in mind when it comes to growing our own net worth and how to participate in our global and local economies. And I think another thing to think about too is that since we participate in a system, such as the free market system or economic system, it may make sense then that we have to develop our own systems to be able to participate and navigate through the volatility of human interaction. And we've seen throughout history how economic crisis is a result of human interaction where there is volatility, where people over leverage themselves, they take on too much debt perhaps to buy stock or buy homes, or maybe governments essentially spend too much money or make policy decisions that aren't necessarily great for the economy, and as an end result creates economic catastrophe that can create havoc and chaos. And we saw this during the Great Depression. And again, look, there's a number of explanations as to why, like the Great Depression or the 2008 financial crisis happened. And again, there's valid arguments for both. That's not the point here. The point is that there is crisis that happens in any economy. There are depressions and recessions and things that occur that are just outside of our control. And the titans like Carnegie and Ford were able to weather this economic crisis by developing systems that they used to be able to generate wealth. And we can look at Henry Ford, for example, where he was able to master the art of mass production, where he was able to mass produce vehicles like the Ford Model T that made him an extremely powerful force within the US economy. It was very hard to duplicate it for other companies to duplicate at the time, at least when he first started mastering this art of mass production. And as a result, that's why to this day, Ford is still one of the top automakers in the world, because they were able to really craft this art of mass production that revolutionized our economy. And it's a system that Ford and the Ford Motor Company developed that made them extremely profitable because they're able to make cars in mass to satisfy consumer desires for these vehicles. And we can go now to kind of a change in topic here to the 2008 financial crisis. Okay. Again, the Great Recession, as it's also coined here. Again, homeowners took on more mortgages or loans that they could afford. And these adjustable rate mortgages, where they essentially took out these loans for little to no money down, even with bad credit, basically mortgages or loans they could not afford, that to purchase properties that really were outside their financial reach. And as a result, these mortgages were packaged into mortgage-backed securities, and banks and financial institutions invested them thinking they could never default. And long story short, well, they did default because too many homeowners bit off more than they could chew. And then, of course, the government got involved and intervened and provided stimulus. And again, there's arguments as to whether or not it was the government that caused this crisis, or banks, or just homeowners themselves. Again, there's probably plenty of blame to go around here. And again, there's many valid arguments as to the root cause of the financial crisis. Was the Fed responsible for creating the financial crisis? Was it just the banks? Again, there's a lot of arguments here. But the point is that, as I've said before, to navigate through our economy and to achieve the financial results that we desire, to increase the probability of success, one needs to develop systems that can be implemented on a daily basis that will yield fantastic results and also help manage or mitigate your risk and reduce the risk of losing your capital. Because I think it's Warren Buffett who said, rule number one, don't lose your money. Rule number two, follow rule number one. Don't lose your money. Because again, we only have so much of it. And if we lose it, it can be very difficult to get it back. And that will put you in a very precarious financial situation in which you want to avoid. So in the next lecture, we're going to be discussing risk-taking and speculation and how we can develop systems to help us make bets, speculate, and manage risk, learning from the masters who came before us.